see is tuna on toast.
Tim,
buddy,
you got the great setup.
do I? Is it okay?
Oh my God.
All right, good.
How are you, Tim?
I'm good, man. I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know. And there's about somewhere between 8 and 10 artists / bands who I adore as musicians and people who I have not had any face-to-face contact with the last 3 years. And of course, you're on that list. So even though this is through Zoom, I feel like I'm right there with you.
I know. This has become the new normal, right?
It has. What's been pretty cool here, though, and I want to tell you straight away, Tuna on Toast, my show, has nothing to do with the food.
I don't care.
Davey Havoc was on. We called it Avocado on Toast that day.
Right. Okay, that's good.
This is a reference to a Seinfeld episode where nothing goes right for George when he orders tuna on toast. So I hope that things go okay for me with this dumb podcast I do.
I can't see how it could not. It'll be great.
Thanks, man. Hey, do you like, and we're recording already and everything, do you enjoy doing the Zooms, or would you rather be face-to-face with human beings?
I guess like I'd rather be face to face with human beings. But it is amazing how much I can get done, like just from right here, without having to fly me somewhere and then put me in a hotel in a car and take me around to radio stations. It's like that seems like that all seems so elaborate now. This is way easier.
But Tim, what are you going to do when hopefully there will be some face-to-face stuff and you're on the road and you're in it could be LA, it could be New York, it could be Chicago, where you got super talent and there's talent everywhere, but maybe you're in a part of the United States where it's a brand new host and you need to go see them. Are you going to be like, oh crap, I just let me do Zoom from my Marriott?
No, hopefully I'll never be that guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I like people. I like being out. You know what I mean? I like traveling. You know what I mean? Like I do. It's all, and I've become such a part of my routine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you are part of like my road family. Like you're a guy that I see like at least once a year usually. You know what I mean? Like a show or something like that. So it's like I can count on, I'm going to see Stryker. Probably there'd be no reason why I wouldn't see Stryker at some point this year. And all of a sudden COVID happens and it's like, oh, I took that for granted that I saw Stryker every year. It's amazing how much travel plays a role in the infrastructure of my life,
Right. And as we sit here looking at each other and having this conversation, this is this a studio that you're sitting in Illinois? I don't need the address, but this is in Illinois. And this is where you write songs or record any songs?
I'm in the room next door to you, actually. I live next door. We've been neighbors for a while. I think it's time to cut your lawn, by the way. It's getting a little out of control. No, yeah, I'm in Chicago. This is a studio. It's not a home studio. I have like a place that I can kind of get out, which came in handy during COVID. It was like when we couldn't go anywhere, at least I had a place to kind of run and hide and keep doing what I do. And then it's turned into like Zoom calls. Like I didn't anticipate my life like evolving into a place where I was doing a lot of this. And so it became a good place to kind of check into the office and turn the computer on and talk to people.
And as someone who has had some conversations that I record for audio and visual, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that you have a mic and you're using it's plugged into that. However you're doing it sounds so good. There's some people, they have their computer 20 feet away and they're screaming at their Mac. Hey, yeah, what's up, Stryker? And it sounds terrible.
I know. I can't claim credit for all of it because I feel like at some point I started doing this and I did plenty of crappy ones, like you said, where like it looked bad, I couldn't hear me, whatever. And I finally called our studio, the blast room in Colorado, and I was like, "Will you guys help me?" Like I'm such like a Luddite. Like I have never done a lot of tech stuff. It's just usually me and a guitar and a voice memo. And so I feel like this COVID thing has accelerated my tech skills. So at least I sort of know how to turn things on as long as you don't mess with it too much. So.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way about my much smaller bubble than you out here. I was thinking about you and your band and the Unraveling. That's 20 mother effing years ago. Do you think about that, or has that been anything you've chatted about or thought about?
Yeah, it's funny. Our band has never been like a big like anniversary kind of band. Never really cared about that stuff too much. But the Unraveling was the first time, something that we had done hit 20 years. Like this whole endeavor of Rise Against, hit 20 years, and obviously it happened in 2020, so at a crazy time of everybody's life. And for me, it turned into kind of like a reflective time of life, especially in the scariest moments of COVID. We were like, will we ever do this again? Is everything we've done already in our past? And so in those moments, I felt pretty grateful that we got to do what we did, and thinking, wow, what a crazy journey that we had. And then all of a sudden, like 2020 hit, and we're reminding each other, hey, you realize it's been 20 years since our first show, or 20 years since our first record. It's really crazy, because the 4 kids that started that band 20 years ago, like, certainly did not anticipate, like, still, or at least I didn't anticipate still being here doing this, and it's snowballing into what it is.
Well, a couple questions based on that statement. First, for me, I think the reason maybe Rise Against should not do a ton of celebrations is because the music you're making is still beyond relevant and important and freaking good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Of course. What were your early goals of the band back in 2000 or 99, 2001?
I guess I can only speak for me. Like, I knew I loved music. You know what I mean? I look back and I realize now that I was like meant to keep pursuing music, but pursuing music seems such a indulgent thing to do. Yeah, at least it did to me at that point in my life. It was like, well, yeah, of course, like, why should pursue music or skateboarding or playing video games or whatever it is that you're into? Like, it didn't seem like a reality. It just seemed like it was like something that I couldn't stop doing. And so I realized now, like, I was far more serious about it than I even gave myself credit for. I was spending 6 to 8 hours a day, like, just playing music and or watching bands and listening to music and playing guitar and kind of honing my songwriting skills. And so when the band started, I knew that I finally was in a group of people that were serious about playing shows and making the band a priority. And that was the first time in my life I was with like a group of guys that, like, this band is the priority. And so I knew that we would at least be giving it a serious stab, a stab in the dark to kind of see what we could do. But the idea that it would become like a viable, reality, and like the occupation, like, that didn't even hit me until like 5 years later, probably. I mean, it was like only when we were finally getting signed and, I was quitting my job and thinking, whoa, like, I remember filling out like a form to get back in the country, like one of those things. And I was like, like occupation.
Right. Yeah.
I think up until that point, I just written student or whatever,
Yeah.
And I was no longer a student. So I was like, wait, I'm not a student. Wait, what am I? And I'm like, I'm writing the word like musician. And I was like, wait, am I a musician? Like, is this happening? It was like one of those moments.
Just for my own mind, and like, we've had many chats over the years that I'm super grateful for, but did you finish college at Northeastern Illinois? Did you fully finish, or was the band starting to happen and you're like, oh my God, this is too exciting. I got to get the hell out of here?
Well, you've hit a nerve here, Stryker.
Oh, sorry, man.
So I apologize for the segue we're about to get into. I didn't finish school, but I just started doing it again.
You did?
Yeah.
Come on.
During COVID, well, I'll rewind. I was a junior at Northeastern Illinois, so you've done your research. And I was good. I would have been going into my senior year, and that's when we got signed to Fat Records. And so we needed to be in the studio making a record. And that's when I dropped out of college because we had a contract to do this. And so, but I always told myself, I'm leaving behind like 3 years of school. One day I'll come back and pick this up.
Like a basketball player or a college football player or athlete. Sometimes they go back after during or after a career.
It felt like unfinished business. It felt like if you were like built a cabin out somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and then you left it one day and you just thought about it the whole time. Like, why don't I just finish that thing? It's just sitting there, And I left behind a bunch of credits, and I enjoyed school, And so during COVID, when we couldn't do anything, I felt the need to stay busy, but we had just made a record. So I wasn't like trying to make another record. And
Nowhere Generation.
Right. We made Nowhere Generation. And I was excited, and it was still under wraps at that point. We're trying to figure out, like everybody else was, like how to put it out. And at that point, I signed back up for like a full load of classes.
Okay, hold
And,
on. To get back into the university, did you have to like go online and apply, or did you make a phone call? How did that work?
So I had to go online and apply and talk to some people. And I mean, and I'll be honest, so this is my third semester I've been doing it now. And nobody over there knows who I am, just like in terms of like what I do professionally.
Right.
Like I've talked to people and it hasn't really come up. And I'm not really the kind of guy who's going to walk in and be like, don't you know who I am? You know? So it honestly, you'd be surprised. People, you know, I'm just a student over there. You know, I talk to counselors and my classes. I've not been in person for any of it. So it's been over Zoom calls.
But the Zoom calls, there's other, 20, 30 other students, right? Or at least?
Yeah. So far, only one of them has recognized me. Wow. And then I was talking to him because, you know, on a Zoom call, you can do like, you can chat on the side or whatever.
Yeah.
So he kind of, it was one day actually,
what class?
It was a philosophy class.
Okay.
And I'd already been in it for a few weeks and he was doing a call just like we are. And he had a bookshelf behind him and he had books and records. And then one day he had a record turned sideways so you could see the whole cover and it was a Rise Against record, you know? And so I was like, is this a coincidence? Like, am I thinking about this too much, you know? And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to message him and be like, hey dude, I like your record, you know, whatever. And he was like, thanks. Like, it's like this album's anniversary today. And I was like, oh, but he didn't say anything else. So I was like, oh, I'm overthinking this. He just has a Rise Against album up. He just doesn't know who I am.
Right.
And then I waited like a beat. I didn't know what to say. And finally he wrote back like in like a flurry of text, like, okay, dude, I thought it was you. I wasn't sure. It was like weird. And I was like, oh dude, it's totally cool. So,
wow.
And then actually I met him in person at a record signing. Like, when the album came out, we went to a record store and he's like, hey, I'm
in your class.
Your classmate from philosophy. And I was like, oh, that's crazy.
Wow. And so what do you have? Are you getting straight A's now at this point, or is it a little more difficult than you thought?
Oh my God, Stryker. Oh, I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but I'm in math right now and I have a final exam tomorrow night.
Oh shit.
So I never did math back in the day. If I could leave anybody listening to this with any advice,
yes,
just do math, man. Like do it the second you get out of high school, you know, do it your freshman year, do it while it's still in your brain. Because once you're 43 or I think it's how old I am, then it's all just kind of blurry. And it's more, honestly, it's been one of the most difficult semesters and last few months of my life getting through statistics and probability. I'll be so happy when it's done.
My cheeks are hurting right now from smiling with excitement and hearing these stories. I hope you like, this is freaking awesome. Do you have a protractor or a compass or a calculator, or do you get to use your laptop?
Well, here's the thing. I got all those things, and then I realized that the world changed a lot in the last 20 years, and it's all on the internet. So
you're the Billy Madison, right?
Oh my God. I mean, it's funny because last time I was in school was like pretty much pre-internet, you know, and the internet existed, but it was not a helpful resource in like 1998. You know, it was like a really slow moving, nothing was on it, you know? And now I'm like, oh, like, you know, things like research are easier. Things like citations are easier. Writing papers, it's all a little bit easier. You can't just Google stuff and pull it off of, you know, and I'm saying things I'm sure all your listeners already know because they probably all went to school, but like you have to get stuff from like peer reviewed sources, from libraries and that kind of thing. But that physical trip to the library doesn't always need to happen. That stack of books that you're bringing home and then sorting through it, that doesn't need to happen. So there, in some ways, like the process has become like way easier. So, and it's been a rewarding process for me. It's been something to keep my brain going and keep me stimulated. I've learned a lot. It's been helpful as we navigate the crazy time that we live in. You know what I mean? To be immersed in like sociology and philosophy classes, you get a sense of like, you're talking about like sort of like the nuts and bolts of humanity. And it kind of makes you feel a bit better about the moments of chaos that you're in at this moment. And you realize, oh, we've been there before. We've gotten through this. We've seen through this, you know, like there are so many good things that are still happening, you know, that there's civilization is still here. We're not just cavemen trying to kill each other for food. You know, there's still, I took a lot of comfort in being in those classes during like the election and stuff like that.
Has it made you look at your own life or your own habits or wherever you live a little bit differently by being surrounded by, even though it's through Zoom, a bunch of probably like 19 to 26-year-olds?
Yeah, because it's funny because I have a 17-year-old and she's going to college next year, and so like it's funny because I was like, I hope I'm not in a class with like one of your friends, like this would be really. And like I said, I've yet to have to go to physically in person too. But yeah, like I think being like a fly in the wall for some really interesting discussions, because I was in like a political science class and a philosophy and a sociology class. So that can be some pretty interesting discussions. And I'm usually just talking to people my own age about that stuff. It's rare that I pop into like a coffee shop full of 20-year-olds and, we hang out. And so it was interesting being a fly on the wall to see and kind of take the temperature of what people living now are experiencing and like how they see it and how they view it and what is important to them and what's not important to them. I felt like really grateful for that opportunity because that's kind of what I do in this band. Like we have fans of all ages, but I will say that like my front rows have been 16 years old for the last 20 years,
Yeah.
And so we're sort of like, we have that proximity to youth culture. And so I'm always trying to tap into like the fears and anxieties and hopes of young people today.
That's so cool, man. And kudos to you for doing this. It sounds, do you know how many more courses you have to take? And then we're going to move on to music stuff.
Sure. It depends on how much I really want to do. I was doing full load like during COVID, but now I'm back to having to do a lot of band stuff. So I've had to dial it down. So okay. If the band stays really busy, it'd still be a couple of years before I actually cross the finish line. And if like we went into another full lockdown, I could probably knock it out in a semester and a half.
And will you go through the graduation ceremony with a cap and gown? I want to hand you flowers when you're done. I want to be there.
I haven't even thought about it that far.
Okay. Hey, how'd you meet Fat Mike from NoFX all those years ago? And then that led to him signing you guys.
Yeah. So that was pretty lucky. My bass player, Joe, his band prior to Rise Against was a band called 88 Fingers Louie.
Yep.
People might know of. They were a pop punk band from Chicago, but one of the few Chicago bands that actually had like national, international success. They toured. They had albums out on Hopeless, and I think it was
Hopeless Records, yes.
Right. And then they had a 7-inch on Fat, I think. I think Joe told me that Mike said he would do a 7-inch, but not a full album. But anyway, that's how Joe knew Mike, and that's how Mike knew of Joe. And so when Joe's band disintegrated and we started Rise Against, naturally Joe just kind of let Hopeless know what we were doing. He let Fat Records know what we were doing. I think it was Nitro Records we were talking to at the time. It's just kind of sending out demos like you do as a band. You make a demo and you just send it out, and we got lucky because Joe had that pedigree, so we had a couple of those contacts. And then Mike, I remember he passed on it right away. He's like, it's good, but I'm not going to sign it. And we're like, okay, it was a long shot anyway, and then we kept talking to like other labels. And then he came back like months later and he goes, wait, have you guys signed anybody yet? And we're like, no, like we're kind of about to though. He's like, wait, I like it. I want to put it out. And then next thing you know, that kind of changed our lives, having your debut album come out on Fat Records in like 2001, that was a big deal.
Right, because if anybody that follows NoFX or Fat Records sees that a artist is signed to that label, it's instant credibility for the artist that just got signed. And Absolutely. It's like, I need to investigate who these dudes are. Who is this Rise Against? What are these songs?
Yes, it was a massive, almost like shortcut for us too. Like it was just like have this album coming out on this label. We didn't even have a show under our belts at that point. No, we were, and that was like a longer story about just having we had problems with like getting a drummer that was working with the band, and so we had a lot of downtime.
Yep.
That we weren't a full band, but we had this demo floating around, just waiting to like get a drummer. And so we were like, wait, now we're signed and we haven't played a live show. What's happening? So like we worked hard, but we got very lucky at the same time. And then we got so lucky to be a part of the Fat Records family. Like you said, was a big deal in the punk world, especially 20 years ago, to be accepted into that family. That's how we spent the next 5 or 6 years, opening up for Strung Out, opening up for the Mad Caddies, opening up for Sick of It All, opening up for No Effects. You know what I mean? That family took us in. Mike took us in. He told No Use for a Name about us, told everybody about us. And then next thing you know, like we were part of that family. And it was like, that's why we're here today, I would say. Cause like we had that network and that family vibe. And we did 2 albums with Fat before the majors came calling.
Did you, I don't know, the way you tick mentally when Fat Mike was like, yep, come on board, you're going to start doing these shows. Did you question, are you personally ready for this? Wait a minute, hold on. What the hell's going on here? Or were you maybe going the other way? It's like, F yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. Come on.
Oh, I definitely always had like a pretty naive bravado, even back then. Like I could leap before I look into a lot of situations. You know what I mean? But that question that you just asked, like, are you ready? Mike asked that to me to my face.
Wow.
When he met me.
Wow.
You know, he had just signed us. He was out on Warped Tour. The closest date was Detroit. So me and Joe drove out to Detroit to I was going to meet Mike and we were going to watch the band and everything. Took us right back to his bus and he kind of saw me. And then I'm 4 or 5 years younger than Joe too. And so I was all of 21 years old probably at that point. And I think he didn't realize that either. And so he saw me and he was like, "Who you're the singer?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He was like, "Have you toured before?" You know? And I was like, outside of Midwest weekends and college towns with my high school band, like not really, you know. He's like, "Are you ready for this?" And I was like, "I have no idea if I'm ready for this. Are you kidding me?" Like I had no clue. And so, you know, it was all baptism by fire.
After Siren Song of the Counterculture did well, I'm not talking about commercially, like, I'm sorry, revolutions per minute. After that came out and it had a following. I mean, that's not necessarily every song was on the radio or anything, but then I think it was Geffen Came Calling. Was that tough? Was that like big discussions within the band, like leaving Fat Records and taking this next jump? Or is that the logical thing for all bands, that that's the way you should do it?
It was a little bit of both. And it's funny because I was just part of this book called Sellout, where an author named Dan Ozzie, he documents this time of punk and emo and hardcore, when bands like Jimmy Eat World, AFI at the Drive-In, you know, all those bands from our world, Taking Back Sunday, Thursday, we're all getting signed. And he does a great document. So if people want to know more about that era, it's really insightful. But so we were definitely part of that era of bands that were getting approached by major labels, and Fat very much felt like a family to us. So like the idea of leaving it seemed really scary, you know. And just as fans of music, we know all the horror stories. You know what I mean? We know all the things where major labels go terribly wrong for bands, and all of the you know, anecdotes about having to go back and write radio singles or do this, or the people who want to mold you. And so we were hesitant about all that stuff, but we were also pretty bold in moving forward and saying, like, if there's something out there for us that makes sense, like we would like to take what we do, our music and our message, and have somebody hand us a bigger bullhorn, you know, where more people can hear it. Cause I feel like there's some potential here.
Sure.
And Fat also believed that there was potential. When they got Revolutions Per Minute, that was one of the first times they were like pushing songs to the radio with like songs like The Angel, or Heaven Knows. We were on like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game, which was like huge at that point. You know, like that was a career. If you had a song on Tony Hawk, it was career changing. You know,
even Brett Gurewitz from Bad Religion was like, that was a game changer for them being in that video game.
Totally. It's so crazy. And like that video game was crazy. Years later, when Guitar Hero came out, like people forget it was a big deal at the time, and having a song on it like was a big deal, especially to younger people who weren't quite listening to radio yet, maybe. So like that's how they got new music. So yeah, there are a few things, like a few breaks like that, where your song gets out there and all of a sudden it's really connecting with people. But we made the jump to a major with Fat Mike's blessing.
Oh, that's so good. That's so cool to hear. I have heard other stories from artists who will remain nameless who said, listen, the major labels get such a bad rap and the indies get all this credit, but sometimes people don't know. It's the indies that will really stick it to you when you want to leave them and go to a major.
Mm-hmm.
And so Fat Mike giving you his blessing, that's very cool to hear.
It was cool. And he was clear. He was like, he didn't give every band that left him his blessing, because I think he really cared about people. And so he had a gut instinct about whether it was a good idea or not. And for some bands, he was like, I don't think that's a good idea. I think, honestly, like, I love you guys. I want you guys to get big, but I don't think it's a good idea. And then for us, he was like, I think it makes sense for you. And I think if you asked him this day, he said, I think we're one of the few bands that it made sense and worked out for. And honestly, like, in my head, I thought, we'll do an album on a major. And like most of my favorite bands, it will fail miserably and commercially. And then we will beg Fat Mike to take us back, and we'll hopefully stay on the Fat roster forever. And we'll always talk about that one major label record that we did, and that one video that we did, and that one time we were in a fancy studio. And I just figured that would be our story. But even knowing and almost anticipating that being our story, we still wanted to, like, take advantage of this opportunity in front of us. And when we met DreamWorks, who had just signed Jimmy Eat World, Sparta, AFI, a lot of people from our world.
Yep.
We met a label that we thought, like, we were able to kind of spread our wings and exist. And they weren't trying to mold us or do anything to us. They just wanted to, help us do what we were doing.
That's
and
awesome.
That's what we did.
That's so cool.
We signed a 5-record deal.
Woo.
And we did all 5 albums.
And all 5, from my memory, went top 10. Debuted at top 10. I mean, they all had unbelievable songs, of course. And I don't know if humans care about the chart, but I think that's pretty effing cool that 5 in a row, number 10, then one's number 3, one's number 2, like, people give a damn about you guys record after record after record.
It was really rewarding because, like, you saw bands come and go. I mean, we signed to DreamWorks, which got folded into Universal and Geffen and all those things.
And then it went to Interscope or something, right?
Interscope, yeah. So we were under, like, Jimmy Iovine for a while there too. But we did 5 records in about, like, say 15 years maybe. And we were the last ones in the building that were still there from day one. I mean, nobody was there from when we signed, and it felt rewarding to do all 5. And it's like, we had a good relationship with the label. Like, we were allowed to just write songs and do what we do and just put records out. We had a badass manager, Missy Worth, who got us through all of it. We had a great team around us. We never submitted a demo before we spent the label's money. Ever. Nobody ever asked for it. We never really offered it either. It was like, this is the record. Take it or leave it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. It was never like, what do you think? Or what would you change? Or
give me your notes on this.
Yes. It was always, here's the finished product and the bill. Go pay the man.
Wow. That's amazing. Out. Yeah. That's really, really cool, man.
I tell that story because it's, like, not one of the stories you hear in this business or this industry. And it's not even a blanket defense or approval of labels or every label or even our label. I'm just like, I can only tell you our experience that we had. And it was and has been and still is, like, a pretty positive experience with people who care about music that just wanted to get out there.
Something that I think about a lot, and I have no theory on it. I have not written a paper on it, but some of the bands that did really, really well between, I'm going to use a time frame like 98 to 2007. And I heard some of their songs and I thought, man, these guys are going to be around as I get older. I'm going to go to their shows when I'm 40, 50, and 60. And then I don't know why it just didn't continue to happen for them. Mm-hmm. Do you have any theories? Like, how come some bands continue to, is it just the songs and the performances, or is there something else? Why it just stopped happening for certain artists?
Yeah, I mean, that's, like, a favorite pastime for guys like you and me, right? To sit down and just figure out, like, why isn't this band the biggest band on the planet, And I feel like there are so many reasons, like you said, yes, there's songs, there's maybe, like, more like the cultural zeitgeist, and they were no longer a part of it. Maybe they were trying something that was just not something that resonated with their fans, whatever. Inner turmoil takes out a lot of bands, like, and it's then, and the inner turmoil comes out, maybe not even like in a fight that breaks them up, but it comes out in like the songwriting. Maybe it comes out in the decisions they make, because they can't make decisions, and all of a sudden things just kind of grind to a halt. I like to think of it as like one of the big reasons is sometimes it's not the band's fault at all. Just like I think Rise Against works hard, and we write songs, and we are all focused on that. We care about the art, and that's kind of like 50% of the game. That's kind of like building a sailboat and putting it on the water. Like that's a lot of work to do, but in the end, you're just waiting for the wind, right?
Yeah.
Because without it, it doesn't matter how hard you work. You're waiting for that wind, and for some of us, that wind came. You know what I mean? And it was like, I'm so glad we built this boat and we put it out here. We worked so hard, because if we weren't out here when the wind came, we wouldn't be going anywhere. And then sometimes the wind stops for people, you know what I mean? And I think that wind is like, that's just culture. That's just people, what they love, what they don't love. It's shifting. It's not something anybody can predict, really, And so just like that wind might make you famous one day, like that same wind, not your fault, might kind of just sink your ships.
That being said, as you've gotten a little bit older, but you continue to put out records every 2 to every 3 years, and Nowhere Generation came out, I believe, in June, and it did well, and songs on the radio and charting and all that. Do you do that like late night by yourself? Phew, wow, people still are listening, or is that not part of how you operate mentally?
Oh, absolutely, I do that, because so many of our peers, so many of our peers are no longer like there with us anymore. Some of the bands that we started with, you know what I mean? And so you keep thinking that like their number came up and then your number must be next, And so I feel like, especially in between albums, you put out an album and you work your ass off on it and you work hard to promote it and get out there and play the songs live and connect with people, and it works. And then you kind of go away for a minute to like create your next chapter of your band.
Yeah.
But you're always wondering in the back of your head, like, are people still going to be there listening when we get back? Like I feel like your band sometimes, at least like a rock band like us, it's almost like an old classic muscle car that's been sitting in your driveway for a while, and you put the key in and you just listen. Is it going to turn over? Is it still going to be there? And so every time it does, just like it would be if you had an old car, it's kind of a surprise. Like, oh my God, it started up. It's going. This is great, Yeah. So every record feels like that. Like when you make it, when people like it, it's like, oh, this is great. Like the car's running and people still like it. This is awesome.
You just recently also put out the Nowhere Sessions, and you covered a Misfits song, right? And then a Creedence Clearwater Revival song. One of the last shows I went to before the pandemic, and it was months and months before the pandemic. It was it was Rise Against and the original lineup of the Misfits at the Bank of California Stadium in LA.
Oh, yeah.
Tim,
right. That would have been one of our last shows we played.
That show was so good, dude.
Oh, what a cool show.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you know Glenn well, or like, do you guys hang out and have coffee and pet cats? Like, what do you have a relationship with him/them?
No, I can't say that I do, but we were super excited to be a part of that show. In fact, we were off the clock. We were working on the album. We were supposed to be focusing. We were saying no to every opportunity and offer that came our way, and then that one came our way, and we're like, oh man, like how do you pass that up? And so that was, I mean, it's so cool to play with the Misfits, one of like the Mount Rushmores of punk rock, and so cool to play for their fans, you know what I mean? To play for Los Angeles, California Misfits fans, to be out there in front of them and to get to kind of share that evening. I think it was Distillers, right? And Nowhere League, so many cool bands.
Yeah.
Like that was such a cool night for sure.
Hybrid Moment is the song. Why'd you decide to cover, of all their songs, that particular Misfits song?
Well, the funny part about the Nowhere Sessions and those covers is like the dirty little secret is that we're always playing those songs at sound checks, and sometimes people are recording and sometimes they're not. And so like that one we'd played it a bunch, just for fun. and we were doing the Nowhere sessions, which is essentially Rise Against recording live versions of some of our new songs and some old songs. And the day was wrapping up, and it was our last day in this little studio we've been working in, and we were finishing sort of early, and somebody was just sort of like, well, we have another hour to kill. Do you guys want to do anything else? Like, the cameras are here. It's all plugged in. We can just wrap up now and I'll go home early. Or if there's anything else you guys want to do. And we're like, well, when we have extra time, we just play punk covers pretty much. So that's what we started doing. And we played the Misfits thing and we played CCR. And I didn't even know if we were even still recording. We were just having fun. I was like trying to remember all the lyrics. We hadn't rehearsed it,
What?
And so it's funny that like it was documented and it becomes a thing that like we're talking about, because it was such an afterthought that day. It was not a plan. It was more like, all right, you guys got an hour. What do you want to do? And it's like, all right. And someone's like, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next thing you know, we're into it.
Is the Fortunate Son cover is the original longer than 2 minutes, or yours? Or you guys just condensed it and played it super fast?
That's a great question, actually. Here's the other thing about Rise Against playing covers is we mostly play the version that we remember in our head and we agree on. And so if it was held under the microscope, it may not be the version, but we've now just kind of committed to it. And I'm like I said, it's always been so casual, like we always do it in a pretty casual setting. I don't think any of us anticipated what we were doing was now going to come out like on a whole EP and that kind of thing. But we definitely played it faster for sure than CCR plays it. Yeah.
It's really good.
Thank you. Yeah. I was like, yeah. And what's funny about CCR is that we used to do that. Like, you started this whole interview talking about the Unraveling. We used to do that song on the Unraveling tours, like that's how long we've kind of been playing that song. I don't know. It just kind of snuck into like, somebody mentioned it one day and then we just played it back in the day. So it's a weird throwback for us to even go back to it, to remember those opening shows when no one knew your band. And so sometimes you threw in a cover just to get people to pay attention to you.
Right. Whether it's The Sufferer and The Witness or Appeal to Reason or Endgame, whatever it is, do you care if someone says, holy shit, Rise Against just made the greatest album of their career and it's the best album of the year? Or if someone says, Rise Against is not living up to what they did 4 years. Like, do you even look at that or care about that stuff?
No, I mean, I don't care about the stuff. I think it's totally natural. I think it's like the age you are, the way you find a band, there's no way you're going to care about a record that you've heard at 16 than the record that you heard at like 25 or like 30. Like, there's no secret. Like, we all love the albums that we discovered in our adolescence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so those are the albums that are going to connect with you, and your connection with them has so much more to do than just with me and the lyrics and the song. It has to do with like who you were in a car with that day, like who you went out to go like skateboarding with that day, like the girl or the boy you were dating at the time. Like your memories are all sort of bundled up in that album, which like we have no control over. You know what I mean? So like it like when you say this is my favorite album or this is my favorite album or this is like I don't really care like which gateway drug got you into Rise Against. You know what I mean? I mean, like I care, but like I find your experience is totally valid and meaningful, and all we want to do is just still be there as the incoming class of freshman punk rockers come in, and then they can decide which one is their cup of tea.
Were there some bands other than, say, a Fat Mike, and maybe it's not even him, where you opened up for them and they treated you a certain way that inspired you to treat bands a certain way, whether they were super cool to you or told you, there's 4 dressing rooms here, there's 4 band members in the opening band, you guys have to do everything in your van or bus?
That's a great question. And I think that, yeah, you hit on something important too, because the band that you become has a lot to do with your introduction into the industry, and we were very lucky to come in under the guidance of, I think a couple of seminal tours. Rise Against opening for Sick of It All in Europe, which was our first European tour, which was probably 2002. We shared a bus with Sick of It All. We did like 5 weeks and like squats in like Europe with these 4 New York City alleyway crew, hardcore legends, right? So it was intimidating, to walk out there, and like we were kids, they didn't know us, But anyway, the way that they like behaved and maintained their band was with such like respect and integrity, and they treated us with respect and integrity, and the people around them also like mirrored that. We were all there just taking notes. We were all there just on the sidelines, like, oh, this is how you tour. This is what it is to be cool to people and be nice to people, and but at the same time stand up for yourself if you're getting screwed, and that kind of thing. But there's a way to do that, and so that played a huge role in how we would go on. Fat Mike was always super cool to us. NoFX was always super cool to us. The whole Fat family, like there were just, you treated opening bands with respect. And we were an opening band for so long. Like there was a long time before we actually headlined. And so we got to open up for a lot of different bands. And each one you realized like, oh, like if we ever were in their position, like this is the way it's done right. And this is the way it's done wrong.
Cool.
Yeah.
I know you're from the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're an LA band based on how much we have loved Rise Against from so early on. Do you and the guys feel that way? Not that you're from here, but have you felt the love from specifically Los Angeles?
Oh yeah, we feel very at home, like on the West Coast, like in general, And I think about that, like even back to the van days, driving like the van from like the Midwest out to California to play shows. And as you get into like, say, Arizona, like all of a sudden, like, wait, I hear Pennywise on FM radio. It's like, what's happening out here? Like there's Pennywise on FM radio on the West Coast.
Yes.
This is crazy. Like that would never happen in Chicago. It would never happen in the Midwest. And I just remember hearing that and thinking like, this is where we belong. We're among friends here. These people are cut from our cloth. And so we always felt
cool.
we were mistaken for a Los Angeles band for a long time. We spent a lot of time there and played, and it was on the Fat Records roster and played with a lot of LA bands. And then we were also mistaken for a Canadian band for a long time because I feel like haphazardly, like a lot of our early tours were almost all Canadian tours. At that point in your career, you're just accepting offers, like any chance. Somebody offers a tour, like you say yes to it, and for some reason they were like all Canadian tours, and so I feel like we were in Canada a lot too. So I think Canadians think that we're Canadian, and then Californians think that we're Californian.
How important is it for young bands in 2021, and hopefully there's bands hopefully there are bands, like there's 3 guys or girls, whatever, in a room, 18 years old, to get out there and say yes to every opportunity that is presented to them to get to the place that they want to be? Do you still need to? I mean, I think that's so necessary early on. I'm not saying to compromise your art, but to get out there and like, you're going to have no money. You're probably going to sleep in a horrible room and you're going to be stinking, not taking proper shower. Is that still to get to where someone wants to get to important these days? Or is there another way to do it?
Man, that's a great question. And I feel like I'm so hesitant to give advice to young bands these days as like a 42-year-old man who started this band before social media. But certainly if I was to give advice, don't be afraid to jump at opportunities that come your way. Even if you think that you're not quite ready for them, that's where you're going to become ready for things. That's how you're going to learn, like in those flames, you're going to learn as you're forged in those flames. And so I would say that for sure, but also like you said, don't be afraid to say no to stuff that doesn't feel right. Like, don't be afraid. Cause I feel like sometimes with a band like Rise Against, we've defined ourselves, through the things that we've said no to, sometimes more than the things that we've said yes to, And so your band, your name, like your self-respect, like that's at the end of the day, it's all you have. You know what I mean? And if you're going to have a 20-year-long career, that's what your fans are going to care about. They're not going to care about your latest single or your SNL performance, or they're not even going to care about if you have like a bad show, because they're going to be with you forever. They're going to care about you and your name and what you do, and they're going to learn to trust you. And so if you can find that trust with fans, like that will take you through a long career.
9 full-length studio albums in, plus a ton of other great stuff that you guys have created, including the Nowhere sessions that we chatted about. Do you guys have the fire? I think you do, that every couple of years you're going to get in the studio and you're going to give us 8 to 12 new songs.
That's what it feels like. I don't feel like our tank is empty.
I don't
yet.
think so. Not even close, man. Not even close.
I think we're still trying to make the best Rise Against song. We're still trying to make the best Rise Against album. The world keeps creating things to rise against, so we're never in short supply of that, you know. And so yes, I still, yeah, it's weird too. I feel like a renaissance with Rise Against too. I feel new and urges to do it, new and different urges to keep this band going and keep connecting with people. You know, I want to be a lighthouse that's kind of steering ships, and you know, and I think people, I want them to be able to rely on us, that we will be on as they're coming in.
I love that, man. Oh God. Okay, Tim, I think we'll wrap it right there on that note. That was a really nice place to wrap it. Thanks for being so nice to me over so many years. I appreciate it.
So of course, I'm super stoked. I'm stoked on your new thing too. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Thank you.
It's good to see your face. Good to hear your voice.
You as well.
Hope to see you at a show soon and all that good stuff.
I will see you the next time you're playing LA. I promise I will be there. And again, the way you have carried yourself as a professional and personally in front of so many eyeballs over so many years, and the way you use your platform while creating all these songs, doing it, and the mix of it, it's just so admirable. And that's why you're still here, and that's why zillions of people care. So congrats and thank you again. I'll see you soon, Tim.
Thank you, Stryker. I appreciate that.
You got it, man. Okay, see you later.
Man.
All right.
Yep, have a good one.
Okay, you too. Bye. Hope you enjoyed. Now hit that subscribe button. And for more Tuna on Toast, listen wherever you get your podcasts.